Hi, I've been asked a lot about drawing from reference, and today that's what we're going to be talking about. Hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 20 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So, a lot of different people have asked me a lot of different questions specifically about using reference observational drawing. Drawing what you see, either whether or not you're copying a favorite cartoon character, uh, looking at a photograph, or sitting in front of an object, still life, looking at a flower, or using a photograph of a person for reference in order to be able to do painting or modify it or whatever it is. Reference is very important. So I'm going to actually, as an example, I'm going to draw something from reference, and I'm going to show you my thought process, how I approach it, what I see when I look at a subject, and all these things can be applied to copying, doing a still life, figure drawing, whatever it is, using reference, it's critical. So these principles are going to be pretty much universal whenever you're doing any kind of observational drawing. Now I'm going to be drawing a figure, as I said, but um, one of the things that I will recommend when drawing a figure is going to figure drawing a lot. And the reason for this is because the principles I'm going to show you are simple, but they require a lot of practice. And what I tend to do to this day is go to figure drawing and do 2 minutes to 5 minute poses because it forces me to sit down and just practice these simple principles. The basic foundational principles I'm going to be talking about is what I draw over and over and over and over and fail a lot. And so when it comes to actually doing it under pressure for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, it forces you to hone in on these things. And then when you have to do it in practice, you've had so much practice doing these so often and so much that it becomes a lot second nature. It becomes easier to do when you actually have to produce. Okay, so let's begin. When approaching any kind of observational drawing, any kind of reference, here are the 5 steps that I tend to look at. I look at the overall shape the figure makes or the object makes. Um, I look at the gesture. If it's a figure, it's easier. If it's an object, it probably doesn't have a gesture, but that's not necessarily true. Flowers and organic objects tend to have gestures as well. I look at the negative spaces. This is really crucial. I measure everything, space and place. Measure is so important. And then I finally find the volume of the forms. The volume of the forms are the solidity and what makes up of the object, and that's usually the last thing I do. Why? Because you are dealing with graphics when you are taking objects and looking at objects to use as reference. So let me break down all these steps using an actual object or an actual point of reference. Let me move this aside and I'm going to show you this. So I've got this photograph, and this is the photograph I'm going to use as reference. I like this actor. I think he's got a very cool characteristic face. I think that he probably would have made a very cool Bruce Wayne in Batman if Ben Affleck hadn't been chosen to be Batman. I think he would have made a very good Batman. All right. Anyway, and because of that, I think I'm probably going to make this photograph. I'm going to take this photograph and make a Batman drawing. So let's get started here, and I am going to draw over this photograph, not because I draw over photographs, but because I want to show you really quickly what it is that I do and what I look for based on the list that I just talked about. So when I look at a photo that looks like this, what I tend to do is oh, this must be a really tiny photograph too, so it's a good thing that I'm not using it as my foundation. All right, so when I look at a figure like this, I look at the overall shape of the figure makes. Okay, so this is when I look at this. This is what I see. Okay, I see this. I see this. Maybe even the rock could be part of it. But this is what I see when I look at this figure. Okay? What does that mean? It means that I'm breaking up the page into a graphic shape. It means that when I look at this, I'm seeing the totality. I'm looking at this as a mass. That's what I imagine in my head. If I was to start, I would probably do that. I look at the gesture. Within this, I also, within this mass graphic shape, I'm also seeing the gesture he's making. So I'm also seeing that this is happening. So do you see that there's this power going on here? So if you were to take that off, this is also what I see. These are the forces that I see working within. This is the power of the pose that I see working in this reference. Okay, so these so far are the two things that I tend to look at, and I tend to see, and I tend to internalize before I even start drawing. Okay, and sometimes I draw the shapes, sometimes I draw the gestures, sometimes I don't. It depends on how difficult or tricky I find the reference to be. Now here's another thing. I look at the negative spaces. Okay, so the negative spaces are really, really important because the negative spaces are any place that is making an interesting shape what's this shape doing? These are the negative space. These are the negative spaces. Okay. I'm not looking at the interior. I'm looking at the exterior. So I'm going to show you something really interesting. Because when you focus on the negative spaces, the figure shows itself on its own. If you're only just you could draw an entire figure just trying to find the negative spaces. Just drawing that will pop the figure out. So what you're doing is looking for the shapes, looking for these shapes, these shapes that he's making. Okay, just doing that. So you're doing something graphic. You're looking at something that is flat, and you're working in a flat and graphic medium. So when you start breaking things up into these abstract negative shapes, the figure, the object that you're drawing starts appearing. I'm not focusing on anatomy. I'm not even thinking about it as a figure. And that is very helpful because you could approach any drawing as long as you're approaching it as an abstract shape, as an object rather than a subject. If you're just breaking it up into pieces, and not trying to trick yourself into thinking how much more complicated it is because it's a figure or because it's a mountain or whatever it is. You're looking for very simple things like negative spaces, gestures, and graphic shapes. Okay, so all these things are the things that when I look at the photograph, when I'm looking at the figure that I'm going to be working on or the reference I'm looking at, I'm thinking about negative spaces. I measure everything, space and place. Okay, so number 4, measure everything. When approaching a figure, when looking at a subject, any kind of subject, what placing these things in negative space, placing the negative spaces and things like that require you to be paying attention, very, very close attention to where they relate to each other. Okay, so for example, measure everything. What is the distance between this area here and this area here? What is this distance? Okay. You can't place this and these together without knowing how far away they are. What is the distance between here and the edge of the face on this side? You have to get this spacing right in order to place this negative shape. What is the distance between here and here? What is the shape? What is the distance between this side of the and all of that stuff? Eventually I'm going to get in here and I'm going to go, how much space is between here and here? How much space is between here and here? Is it longer, shorter? How much space between here and here? Longer, shorter? Do you see? So from the top of this here to, so every you're looking at these things and then you're comparing it to your own drawing, and then you're looking at that and going, is it the right space in between? Am I getting the right spatial relationship? Am I measuring this correctly? Am I getting this correct shape? Is this space between these two things far enough apart? Before you do anything, you put little dots, and then you're measuring. You're trying to see how far away this is from that thing, compared to, say, this and this. How much wider is this to this? So I will explain this, and I will show you that when I do it on by actually using this and drawing it. Okay. Right now I'm just showing you what I'm looking at when I see this reference. And finally, I find the volume and the form. So once I get all these measurements, once I get all the gesture and the graphic design down, and I've actually and I've got the figure all kind of broken down into his component parts, then and only then do I actually start thinking slightly more about the form, what makes up the figure, breaking up this person as if he was made out of boxes and cylinders and things like that, so that I can more easily break it down into three-dimensional forms. Okay. Okay, so so that's how I approach looking at a figure. And now I'm going to draw this uh, before your very eyes, and try to use this as reference for a Batman drawing of some sort. If you found this video valuable, I would like to encourage you to return value for value by becoming one of my patrons over on Patreon. Not only will you encourage me to continue making informative videos that are useful to you, but you get extra perks too. For only a small investment of $1 a month, you can get all new videos I create months before anyone else gets to see it. Also, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer as a patron, you get priority and I answer your questions first. On top of that, when you're a patron at any level, you become part of a raffle where I send original art via mail to the winner of that month. The higher your tier, the better your opportunity to win. Higher tier patrons also get access to any art I do in high-res JPEGs and also full access to PSD files to any work I do, including the PSD files of these videos. Currently, there's a huge backlog of downloadable files you can get, so right away you're going to get quite a lot of bang for your buck. And the more patrons I get, the better these videos will get. The more content I can produce. In other words, the more you benefit. Please consider becoming a patron. Thanks. The link to my Patreon is on the screen and in the description of this video.